Welcome back, football faithful, to the Draft Podcast, a proud member of the Gem City Sports Podcast Network, your go-to spot for NFL draft breakdowns, where speculation meets science and combine measurables are gospel. I'm your host, Paul Adamzak, and this week we're diving deep into the NFL draft landscape with an assortment, a cadre, a cavalcade of new segments that are part science, part crystal ball gazing, and entirely entertaining. We are 29 days away from round one, so buckle up because today we're playing a little game I like to call Boom or Bust, where conventional wisdom meets gut instinct. My guest and I will take turns throwing out some names of draft prospects and debating whether they're on a path to stardom or headed straight for the draft day cautionary tales list. We'll break it down, debate it, and probably disagree just enough to keep it spicy. Think of it as draft speed dating, except instead of awkward small talk, we're arguing over whether a linebacker's tape matches his hype. Then we're shifting our focus to one of the most debated position groups in this class, wide receiver. My guest and I will compare our personal top 5 wide receiver rankings, breaking down what makes each guy special, and of course, where we completely disagree. And if we're feeling generous, we might even throw in a few best of the rest names, guys who didn't quite crack the top 5, but still deserve some love. We'll debate, we'll argue. Chances are by the end of the segment, at least one of us will be ready to dramatically declare the other's draft analysis completely off the rails. But wait, there's more. My guest is bringing his top sleepers list, those diamond in the rough prospects that the mainstream draft coverage is sleeping on. These are the guys who might not be headlining Mel Kiper's big board, but could be stealing the show on Sundays this fall. Think of them as the draft's equivalent of finding a $20 bill in an old jacket. Unexpected, but oh so sweet. Joining me today, and I'm gonna try to fix my camera. Oh boy. Shoot. Joey, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, I'm gonna try to work on this camera in the background, but for the meantime, let's keep it going. Joining me today, you might remember him from a previous episode where he boldly, some might say recklessly, took Amarian Hampton over Ashton Genty, 6th overall, and a pick that had me questioning his optometrist. He's a dedicated tape grinder, an experienced football coach, and a man who believes playoff beards aren't just for the postseason; they're a year-round commitment. Please welcome back to the Draft Podcast, my good friend, Joe Allward. Joey, your camera's working better than mine, so you're in a better spot than I am.
It's okay. You want to save the good visual for your guest. I get it. I love it. But no, on a serious note, glad to be back. Definitely had a great time last time, and all I can say is knocking on the Amarian Hampton pick. Look who's been picking up a lot of steam the last 2 weeks since our last meeting together here on this great podcast. He's moving up the boards, and teams are starting to really see what he's all about.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Well, we've got a lot to go over on this podcast. What do you say we start this thing off with a boom or bust segment?
Let's dive on in.
All right, here we go. Every year, the NFL draft is full of prospects who divide opinions, guys with sky-high potential, but just as many red flags. Some will develop into stars. Others might struggle to make an impact, and that's what we're taking on in this segment called Boom or Bust. Here's how it works. I'll name a player. Joe will react with his boom or bust take, and then I'll follow up with my own thoughts. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right, I'm going to start off one. Joey, we went over the list ahead of time just so you could gather your thoughts. We did this last night, but I'm going to start out with one I did not give you last night. Just
always a curveball
right out of the gate. Curveball right out of the gate. And we're going to start with boomer bust prospect James Pierce Jr., the edge out of Tennessee. Love him or hate him, boomer bust, Joe?
I'm going to say bust. I love everything James Pierce has put on to tape. His measurables are impeccable. He's that very twitchy athlete with an explosive first step, very fast hands. Great anticipation for his size at 6'5", 243. The reason why I have him as on the bust, though, from a football aspect, his snap count is severely lower than other players that are in this draft class with him. So not as much tape available, not as much time playing against high-level talent on the offensive side of things for the opponents. And also, he needs more of a true pass rush plan and the nuance and technique that comes with it and be able to do that more often. He's kind of that guy that always goes to the same bag of tricks frequently, always has the same moves. So, from a football standpoint, I think that's why we're looking at bust. But the one thing that really concerns me is his off the field character issues.
Yep,
That's something
bingo.
that there's been a lot of talk about. I don't know about you. I know how you are. You're not a big comp player kind of guy. But one person that he really reminds me of
Yeah,
is a lot of those question marks that Randy Gregory came into the NFL with coming out
that's a
of
good comp,
college.
actually. Yeah.
Having the off the field issues, but also having that superb play on the field, but not a lot of film out there besides just one season. So I'm a James Pierce fan, honestly, but I do think his trajectory is more towards that bust line than it is boom.
I'm with you 110%. I was ready to disagree with you, but I see the upside, the burst, the bend, the finishing ability. They're all there. But this is boomer bust. Let's talk about the red flags. Serious off-field concerns. Tennessee has been, let's say, selective with what's even gotten out, so we don't even know the full context of what he's gotten into in his time there. Teams are going to dig deep. I have no doubt about that. If they don't like what they find, he could absolutely slide. This is a first-round talent, but there's some holes. On top of that, he's light. We listed him as an edge. He's 242 pounds. A little bit on the slight side for an every down edge. He wins with athleticism now, but is he going to have the play strength to handle NFL tackles? I don't know. If he keeps his head on straight and fills out, Pro Bowl talent. But I just have a feeling if he goes too early, we're going to look back and say, how did we not see this coming? That's where
It's
I'm
the
at.
expectation level of it. I mean, it really
fair.
is. And a lot of these teams nowadays have hired private investigators, not just for James Pierce, but anyone that's going to be a first or second round talent. It's common knowledge that teams hire private investigators to find any skeleton they can in the closet because at the end of the day, this isn't just about putting the best 53-man roster on the field. It's also about having that appearance to the community, having that appearance to NFL International now because how many games are played international. These kids, these guys, I mean, you can call them kids almost because some of them are only 20 years old and just
Pretty
getting out
much.
of college, but it's the aspect of they're role models now. And to what toxicity do you want to have a role model in your locker room that's not filling out to what's expected?
I'm 1,000% with you. You got to be absolutely sure that this guy is A1, ready to go, come in and compete to take him in the first round. You're getting that kind of talent. I feel just my gut instinct, he's going to be a second round pick. The talent is too great, even with all the red flags, for him to fall out of the top 50 picks. You agree?
Somebody will take it. Somebody will take a chance on him. I'd be honestly surprised
In the
if he
first?
did. I think so. I'd be surprised with his talent level if he fell
Okay.
outside of the top 32. And the funny thing is, there's always a guy that's out there with a character issue. It seems like every year that falls down the boards ends up going to Kansas City, Philadelphia, one of these Super Bowl winning teams that should have been
Good.
easily a top 5 pick, but because of their character level, they fell down. And guess what? They seem to figure it out, and they don't end up getting in trouble in the end.
Strong organizations are what these kind of players need. So I'm with you. I'm going bust, but I absolutely can see the boom potential and a first round pick. Ready to go for number 2?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Guy that I allowed you to prepare for. Interesting guy. Interesting to hear what you have to say about him. Former running backs coach, maybe still current running backs coach, maybe future running backs coach. Cam Scadaboo, the human highlight reel out of Arizona State, the running back. What do you think? Boom or bust?
He's a tough one. I definitely have my running back coach's hat on this one.
Yeah.
Possibly going in a different direction this upcoming season, but we'll see where that takes me. But nonetheless, I'm going to say boom. I definitely think this guy he has that blue collar pedigree about him. He's not afraid to do the dirty things. He's not afraid to lay a block. He's not afraid to lower his shoulder and run somebody over. I know his numbers are a little bit skewed. I mean, 1,712 rushing yards this past season. Prior to that,
A lot of carries.
786. And then his freshman year, 1,369. So definitely an up and then dip and then back up resume for him. But he's just a do-it-all guy. He's slippery in his forces so many missed tackles. He's got decent vision and feel for blocks and open space, which is very hard to find a 3-down running back that is also able to get in there on the pass block scheme and be able to do it. But his footwork, I think, and his blue collar chip on his shoulder is the reason why I have him as a boom prospect, going into this draft.
Okay. I'm with you on all that. I agree with most of what you said. I have him as a bust. This is probably the most controversial and unpopular thing I've said on this podcast to this point. And I mean, sure, he's gritty, but we got to be realistic. 4.6 speed, he's going to get caught from behind in the NFL. There's an old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. And he kind of seems like that to me. He does a lot of things well, not all of them, or not anything spectacular. I see him as a gadget guy, special teams player. I think he's good enough to make a roster. I think he gets drafted. I think he sticks. I think he's a guy who's in the NFL for a long time. I don't see the stud superstar, all pro level running back that maybe others do, especially because if his burst doesn't translate. His running style invites punishment. Can he hold up over the course of a full season? You said it a little bit ago, and I've made fun of myself. I'm trying to become better at comps. So here's my comp for Scadaboo, Brandon Bolden. So It kind of invites that, like, he's going to have good plays. He's an NFL caliber player. You're going to be able to put him in a lot of different situations. I love the pass protection. He is tough as hell. He's a guy that you can play on the field. But again, just that running style, he's going to run into linebackers. They're going to be able to hit him back with the same force that he's been able to deliver the last 3-4 years. So how long, the average NFL career is just over 3 seasons. So he's probably a 5, 6, 7 season guy, not a Hall of Famer. I don't know if he's a number 1A running back. I think at best he's a committee guy, but he'll stick. A bust as far as he's not going to be an all-pro, but I don't see an all-pro either. Is that fair?
See, where I'm at with why I have him as a boom prospect, my comp for him, and you might find this an interesting one, but hear me out. Kerwin Williams of the Rams, 5'8", 209, or 5'9", 208, Kerwin Williams size, 5'11", 215 for Cam Scadaboo. Kerwin Williams is his 40-yard dash time coming out of the combine, 4.65. So to show that Kerwin Williams, I mean, I'd say he's top 10 running back in the NFL. I think that's very reasonable to have that discussion for him. And he doesn't have that breakaway speed that we're talking about here with some of these guys running 4.3s, 4.4. So we've seen it done. I'm not saying Scadaboo is going to do that, but Kerwin Williams is where I have his comp down as what lines him up and what could be the potential for him.
I don't hate it. And it seems to track, I think, along like the same mindset as what I'm thinking. He's going to have to be in sort of a system room. Kyron Williams, he's in that McVay system. A lot of good running backs come through that system, and they all sort of look a certain way. I think he's an NFL caliber running back. Don't let me get you confused thinking like I don't think he'll make it. I do. And he might have some great seasons. Just is he a 10-year running back? Is he a guy that we've got Scadaboo, we don't need to worry about the running back room? I don't think so.
His age is the other thing that I can respect on that, being 23 years old in 1 month currently at the recording this podcast. So a little bit older. I mean, not really older, but hindsight.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
NFL years, he's got maybe 6 years of shelf life on him before you start seeing that gradual decline that NFL running backs are known to have.
And running backs specifically, we use the scouting term tread on the tires. A lot of college carries, physical running style. He's not running away from anyone. Reggie Bush ran, 250, had 250 carries, but he only got hit on less than half of them because he ran away from guys or ran out of bounds. Scadaboo's hitting 2, 3, 4 guys per play.
And you're talking 700 carries almost in his college career too.
Exactly. So I think he's a third round pick.
I have him late second, early third.
Fair enough. Ready for number 3?
Let's go.
All right. This one is controversial, and I know that you have a special place in your heart for him, so I'm interested in your breakdown. Jalen Milroe, the Alabama quarterback, William V. Campbell Award winner. That's the academic Heisman, graduated in 3 years, 95.8 PFF deep passing grade, and 4.37 speed. Is he a boom or bust quarterback at the next level?
This is a tough one.
Yeah, I know. Perfect.
I'm going to go ahead and say boom. And the reason being is in recent memory to the NFL, not many top 5 quarterbacks end up making it as an all-pro or end up being that franchise guy. More often or not, do you see guys later in the first round or mid-round draft picks end up being the guy? And the thing about Jalen Milroe, does he have accuracy problems? Yes. Is he slow to read defenses? Yes. Does he focus on his first read? Yes. But here's the thing about him, though. He really started getting his opportunity in Alabama on the back end of Nick Saban's career during all the coaching changes. I think with a stable environment in an NFL program with professional position coaches, not calling college coaches unprofessional or not professional or high school coaches not professional. I mean, we all have the same trade and want to do the best by our players.
Sure.
But these guys are getting paid millions to develop these prospects. When you see the ability and the cannon for an arm, the athleticism, the change of direction ability, there's so much there that I feel like if you get a good enough head coach or offensive-minded head coach or offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, whatever, you can teach someone how to read a defense. You can teach someone how to read coverage. You can teach someone how to move your eyes, move your head to move those safeties on the backside. I think there's too much physical ability that he has to sit here and say he's going to be a bust.
That's fair. I don't disagree with anything that you've said. NFL coaching is different than college coaching. Maybe not so much, especially at a place like Alabama, because that's like the tippy top of college coaching.
But is it, though? That's the point, though. The back half of his time in Alabama, Saban's gone, a lot of change at offensive coordinator, the coaching staff. But it's still, that was one of his biggest years that we expected him to take that leap. You get new coaches in there, new ideology, new way of reading or progressions. It changes. So did he truly get that shake? Did we see the Jalen Milroe this year that we would have seen if Saban and that coaching staff would have stayed consistent to what he had throughout the beginning of his career at Alabama?
You're not wrong. It's a philosophical question, but we got to be real about this. We're talking about a prospect who this past season had a 30%, not 3%, 30% uncatchable intermediate throw percentage. That screams project. You said it. Processing speed is a major question mark. Accuracy is inconsistent at best, and he's a guy who often relied too much on his athleticism. Who does that remind you of?
Lamar Jackson, coming out of college.
No, Lamar was a much better passer. Much better passer. He's Justin Fields, dude. And I understand. Now here's the Pittsburgh fan. Here's the New York Jet fan coming in. Hey, here's a guy who just got a 2-year, $40 million contract. Okay, but a lot of that is, what can he be? What can he be? Not what is he? So this is the draft. This is all about projection. But I try to match that, what could he be, with what is he right now? And I think this is sort of the same thing as we talked about the last two guys. A lot of the, is he a boom or is he a bust, is going to depend on where he's drafted. Is he a first-round quarterback? Do you think he ends up getting drafted the first round?
I don't think we see more than 3 quarterbacks go in the first round. I have a early second-round grade on him. Right. But the one thing I'll say about your Justin Fields comparison, I love it. And here's the thing. I'm one of the few people, I think, that's still on the Justin Fields wagon. Look at that last season he had in Chicago before he was an outcast, or the Caleb Williams situation. The dude played and he didn't have anybody around him. I truly think Justin Fields still has his best days of professional football ahead of him, but he's got to be in the right system. And that's what it's going to come down to with Jalen Milroe. Like I said, a lot of question marks, a lot of rough around the edges. He's my modern day Quincy Carter. I think his ability coming out.
Carter. Wow.
I think the raw physicality attributes that he has coming out of college lines up with that in the modern day football. It's just a matter of getting the right coaching staff on him and being able, you said it, he's a project quarterback. He needs that right staff to be able to mold him. And if he gets in that right situation, that's where we see the boom. And I have a good feeling, being a second round day 2 pick, he's probably going to get that opportunity to go to a good NFL program, be able to sit behind someone for a year or two, learn. He's not going to be forced into playing week one like these
I think
guys
that's
that
huge.
tend to bust out. That are those top 5 picks. We see it constantly every year. These guys come in top 5 picks and end up being a bust because they're thrown to the fire too fast.
I agree with that 1,000%. If I could ask you one more question on Jalen Milroe, do you have a spot that you would like him most in an ideal world? You would put him where?
Quite honestly, and this might be the homer coming out of me, and I'm one of the few fans slamming the table for him. I think Jalen Milroe to Cleveland on a day 2 pick. I think the ability that Kevin Stefanski has shown with non-superstar named quarterbacks, aka Deshaun Watson, he's given those guys the best seasons of their careers. Turnaround Baker Mayfield. He made Joe Flacco look phenomenal. He made all these quarterbacks, Jameis
He made
Winston.
Kirk Cousins a lot of money.
Exactly. He knows somehow. A lot of Browns fans are down on Stefanski because of Watson. Watson's Watson. It's a one-off. I truly believe Kevin Stefanski's a QB whisperer. For whatever reason, he knows how to do it. And I think that ability with that RPO offense that Stefanski's slowly trying to incorporate, but also that play action bootleg, it fits at Milroe's athleticism. You roll to one side of the field. He's got one side to look at. It's either you hit your first and second read, or you take off, and he has that athletic ability to do it.
I love it, man. We'll see what happens. We're moving on to the Boomer Bust segment. Next guy up, Joey, Mike Green, the edge from Marshall, small school guy. He's had one rep at the Senior Bowl practice. He absolutely ran over Connerly from Oregon, and all of a sudden he blew up. Is he receiving too much hype?
I was big on the Mike Green hype train when I first saw that, and I've kind of cooled off.
Everybody was.
I've kind of cooled off to him recently. I think he's a bust. 6'4", so he's tall, but he's not that ideal height for an edge defender or for a DN. Typically, NFL, you're looking 6'5", 6'7", 6'6" is kind of the idea.
Oh, did we lose Joey?
Is very concerning.
There we go.
At 6'4", 248. So that's one of my concerns, but it's just there's something about him. I mean, he's got the ability. He's got 17 sacks this year. He's got 25 plus sacks in his career. I just think coming from Marshall, the more I've thought about it, not great competition. I'm going to go ahead and say bust on this one.
Fair. I'm with you on that one. The more I watch Mike Green, it was not so much about who did Mike Green play. It was more about what did teams that played Mike Green do about him. He played early on against Ohio State, not this past year, but the year before, and they had a guy by the name of Josh Simmons. And what did Ohio State do? Josh Simmons saw Mike Green 3 reps in that game. So they moved Mike Green away from Simmons, and Ohio State then basically went away from Green the rest of that game. You talked about the size. I think he could have made my sleeper list. Had he not had that unbelievable rep at the Senior Bowl, he'd be on a sleeper list right now because he's got a motor that doesn't quit. Think raw power and like rare bend, like Von Miller coming out of Texas A&M. Rare bend. I think he's a double-digit sack guy. If he refines that technique, he's the kind of small school steal that makes GMs look like geniuses. I think he shouldn't be overdrafted, but I think in that 25 to 32 range, I think you get a hell of a deal for a guy who basically I thought was going to be overlooked coming out of a small school like Marshall.
He reminds me of a lot of Robert Quinn.
Robert Quinn, UNC.
Yep.
First round pick there too. Big school. Yeah. Like the bend, the body type, and Quinn had a good long career, 3-4 different teams. He moved around. That was another good one. So Mike Green, you say bust. I say possible boom. We got 2 left here in boom or bust. And we're on to our second quarterback. And this is a guy who's been rising up as of recently, could be on some sleeper charts out there somewhere. Guy by the name of Tyler Shuck, quarterback out of Louisville. 1 real year of film. Overage guy is going to be 25 by the time this season starts, but he might actually be the best prospect in this draft. Tyler Shuck, QB, Louisville, boom or bust?
Football player wise, boom. Career wise, bust. A lot of concerns on the injury level. I believe it was twice he broke his collarbone. He also was out, spent time out in his career in college with a lower body injury. I'm just very concerned about that health ability. From a physical aspect for a football player, he does it all. Great arm, great reads, 6'5", 225, prototypical size for an NFL quarterback, can make all the throws, but it is just that health that's really the concerning about it. And the one thing I did notice from a QB coach type perspective is he makes a lot of throws off his back foot, and his footwork and ability to align his feet with the target is very inconsistent. And with a guy that's at his age, I just don't know if you have enough time to correct that, to make him and polish that diamond in the rough, so to speak, before he starts hitting those back end years of his career. Reminds me a lot of Chad Henne.
Okay. Oh, geez, Chad Henne. Like, oh, I'm getting flashbacks, Vietnam flashbacks. I think you hit the nail on the head with your final point there. And I'll just sum it up to say it's his decision making under pressure and the fact that he's already 25 years old. That's why I think bust. He's a guy with size, arm talent, sneaky mobility. Actually, the best thing I read about him was poor man's Josh Allen. And then everybody says the same thing. If he stays healthy, I'm with you. I think he's bust. The injury history reads like a medical textbook.
Brandon Weeden.
Yeah, Brandon Weeden, right? Decision making under pressure, it's just not there, and it's not like he has a lot of time, like Jalen Milroe, like has 4 years in the NFL before he's Tyler Shuck's age, and like has that much time to be able to figure it out. I think he might top out as a career backup, and that's even if he is able to stay on the field.
Nail right on the head on that one.
All right, man. We got one last one for you. And this one I threw in. I know he's a first-round guy after the combine, but are we overlooking it too much? This is the classic. The 40 shot this guy from the third round to the first round. What do we actually think? Maxwell Hairston, Mad Max, the fastest guy at the combine, cornerback from Kentucky, ran 4.28. Everybody went back and watched the film and saw a ball hawk with lightning speed and sticky hands. What do you think about Maxwell Hairston, boom or bust?
Bust. I think that hype at the 40 time really got, like you said, was able to get him up there. I think he's a CB3 type player. I don't see him playing very much on the boundary. He's got a very light build, as we just talked about. He's known to get very grabby when he's in trouble, which can cause a lot of penalty issues. And when you start getting boundary receivers, guys Mike Evans size, a tight end out there like David Njoku, got big receivers out there, I think you're going to see a lot of penalties, a lot of issues. And one thing, and this might get me a lot of boos and poor comments, but I think he lacks true anticipation. He did have that high NIT total in his career, but I think that was more due to the opportunity he had, the amount of times that teams were throwing at him, than does it correlate actually with his ball skills and his anticipation.
I don't agree with much of that, except I think your last point. I do think this guy's a boom. I think he's a ball hawk, absolute lightning speed. You can't coach it, you can't buy it. Sticky hands. You talk about, well, guys were throwing at him. Well, yeah, because you can set that stuff up. And he's always playing the football, which I love. Rare ability to turn defense into offense. Instincts, sub 4.3. I don't disagree that I don't think he's a boundary guy. So if you say that maxes him out at CB3, I think he could be a great nickel corner. I think he locks up perfectly with those small, fast slot receivers. Like just think the smaller receivers they play in the slot now. Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb. These guys aren't huge. They play in the slot. They're lightning quick. Put a ball hawk on a guy like that, and I think Maxwell Hairston has a really nice career, especially because of that ball hawk ability. I think it's a boom. I think it's a big boom.
I'm not saying I don't think he won't have a very advantageous career or good career because he can't play the boundary. I just don't see with those size. I mean, you're not going to be paying high money for a slot corner, and those guys tend to get overlooked a lot.
I'm with you on that one. I can see it, and I think the size is the biggest thing that may hold him back. I think especially like with defensive backs nowadays and sort of the way that they call the game anymore, I don't think they want super physical battles between wide receivers and defensive backs. I think they want it to be a sort of a little bit of hand fighting, but overall we want to win. We want to separate with feet. And he's just got absolutely unbelievably fast feet, silky smooth hips, and just rare explosion for an athlete, not just for a defensive back. Rare explosion for an athlete. I think that he more than makes up for whatever he loses on the along the line of scrimmage. He's not going to press anybody, but I think he more than makes up for it with those hips. So that's what we got. We got 6 boomer bust guys. I only told Joe about 5 of them. We went 6. He's a true gentleman. Next segment that we're going to do in this one, which by the way, I love the episode title, Boomer Bust, Wide Receivers and Sleepers. Oh my. So we've gone through the boomer bust. Let's get into the wide receivers. Joe, last week I did corners and I did my top 10 and I went an hour and 15 minutes on 10 corners. If I let us both do 10 corner or 10 wide receivers, we'll be here all night. So here's what I want to do. I have a top 5. I had you come up with a top 5. All we did was compare just those 5 names, but we didn't really talk about why they're there. So I'm going to let you, are my guest. I'm going to let you go first. I want you to give me your top 5 list. Then I'm going to give you my top 5 list. And then we'll go back and compare notes, who you had where, why I had this guy over this guy, where you had all this and that. Is that fair?
I like it.
Let's do it. Joe Allward's top 5 receivers starting at number 1. Go ahead.
Matthew Golden out of Texas.
Love it. Number 2.
Travis Hunter.
Oh, okay. There's a flip. Number 3.
Emeka Egbuka.
Egbuka at 3. Okay. Number 4.
Tet McMillan.
Tet McMillan all the way down at 4. And rounding out your top 5.
Luther Burden.
Luther Burden III out of Missouri, rounding out your top 5. Okay, here's what I got. And I just want to say, Joey changed that on me from last night into today. So
we can all have surprises now, can't we? You slide me in one, I get you back.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, well, I gave him one. He's going to surprise me back. Okay, here's my top 5. Number 1, it's Travis Hunter. I know you disagree with that. He's number 1 on my corners board. He's also the number 1 receiver in this draft. It's not close. Okay, so tier 1. Tier 2, and my number 2 wide receiver, your number 1, Matthew Golden, the burner out of Texas. Just moves different. Number 3, Teteroa McMillan. You were high on him early. I was low. Sounds like you're coming down a little bit, and I watched a little bit more. I think I'm creeping up. I do like Tet, but I have him as my number 3. At number 4, and this is where it got hard for me. There was about a half a dozen guys I went back and forth between 4 and 5. And I'll tell you why I went 4, 5, and chose these guys. Number 4, Jaden Higgins, 6'4", 214 pounds out of Iowa State. And number 5, a guy I've been on since early in the season, Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. Hunter, Golden, McMillan, Higgins, Trey Harris, top 5. So let's go back. Top of the list. Matthew Golden's your number 1. He's my number 2. And you put Hunter at 2. So basically we flop 1 and 2. Why do you have Golden over Travis Hunter?
I think obviously the short answer is the 40-yard dash time, but not just that. He's a plus return. He has plus return ability to be able to play on special teams. He's a fast but controlled route runner. He can play on the boundary. He can play in the slot. He's a very versatile guy at 6 foot, $195. There's just so much ability that he has. He's an excellent sideline receiver. I think that's actually his best ability, is that sideline catch ability that he shows. He's just a do-it-all guy. He reminds me not from a career standpoint. I'm not saying he's going to turn into this guy, but his one-handed catch ability that we saw this past season at Texas, a lot of Odell Beckham Jr. moments there, and it just really catches your eye on it.
I'm with you on that one. I'll read you the first line that I wrote for Golden, who again is my number 2. Somewhere between Devontae Smith, suddenness and separation, and Jalen Waddle, coming from a pure speed and burst standpoint. 5'11", 191 pounds, one of only 2 players at the combine to run sub 4.3. And you said it, the speed shows up on tape. Excellent hands, especially along the sideline. He's just one of those guys who knows who tracks the ball real well, hand-eye coordination, but the feet just are like dead stop inside that line. So he never seems to get caught. Well, he caught the ball, but didn't get his feet down. He seemed to get his feet down every single time. Able to high point, make acrobatic catches without losing speed. And oh yeah, 17 yards per catch in 2024. Came into the season sort of, I guess, depicted as the number 2 between Isaiah Bond, who we thought was going to have a great year. Matthew Golden really separated himself. And there's a difference between watching games where you're trying to you're just taking in. There's so much information. You're watching so many things. And Matthew Golden popped when you watch the games. He was a guy that just always seemed to show up. And then when you went back to watch film where you're just watching one guy and you're looking at all the little things, he just kept getting higher and higher and higher. I thought I was early on people saying Golden was the best wide receiver, like over McMillan. And I'm glad you finally caught up to me. A little bit light in the blocking game. Runs a little hot and cold. It seems when he's not involved in the play, he can kind of jog a little bit on the blocking reps, but he's got inside-out versatility as a slot and a flanker. I think he's going to be, as I mentioned, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I want to say 3 of the top 5 receivers this year in terms of yards in 2024 in the NFL were primarily slot receivers. So think like Puka Nacua, think like Amon-Ra St. Brown, think like Justin Jefferson, who played a lot of slot. Guys who could play outside, but they made their money inside. And I think Matthew Golden is that. And like I said, the Devontae Smith feet and the Jalen Waddle just burst. Now, he's not Jalen Waddle, but he moves that way. Mm-hmm. So that's why I have him as my number 2. And obviously, like, you have him that as 1. So I guess my question is, I have Travis Hunter as 1 at 2 different positions. I think as a receiver, he can make guys miss in 2 different ways. He can make defenders miss at the line of scrimmage, and he can make defenders, like, he can shake them off at the top of the route. And we're talking about elite hand-eye, elite A1, top of the class ball skills, tremendous hands, and then he is different after the catch, whether he, plucks an interception or catches a slant route. Just get the ball in his hands, and he's just a different kind of cat, man. Very slight. He's actually lighter than Golden. He's only 188 pounds. You mentioned about the 40. We don't have an official 40 yet. Is he a 4.40? Is he a 4.46? Not sure. I don't think he's going to be 4.29, but I think he's going to be incendiary in that 10-yard split. The vert and the broad, I don't even care. Travis Hunter's arms were measured at over 31 inches, better than 9-inch hands. I just think, I don't know if he's ever going to be a number 1, especially because I think he's going to be a better corner than receiver, but he's just a different athlete. And that's why I put him at 1 over 2. And I think I'm going to guess that you have Golden over Hunter just because he's a pure wide receiver, and that makes sense.
Exactly. And I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I could sit here and tell you that I honestly debated about Travis Hunter being a lot lower on my top 5 rating than at 2, and you hit it right on the head. I'm not going to sit here and rank a guy that, I'll be honest, Travis Hunter, I have my discrepancies about Travis Hunter. Phenomenal athlete. Phenomenal athlete. But the problem with that is I don't see him making as big of an impact on the offensive side of the ball where I think he should be ranked as the number 1 receiver in this class. And it strongly made me have issues to my own core belief. I had to talk myself into putting him at 2, just because I don't see that he's going to have enough consistent impact on the offensive side of the ball of why should he be ranked higher. I mean, I'd rather a receiver like a Matthew Golden, Tet McMillan, Emeka Buka, whoever, who's going to be out there 30, 40 snaps a game, whatever, always a number 1 receiver compared to someone who you might only see a handful of times a game on that side of the ball.
That's fair. I think we pretty much said it all. I don't disagree with any of your points. I think we just kind of come at it from a different mental standpoint. I'm just looking at, he's the best athlete here. He catches the ball well. Football is super complicated, but sometimes I think it's magnificently simple. Give the ball to the best athlete, watch him go. That's
if we were talking,
but I think I don't know. That's just what it comes down to me.
If we were talking Travis Hunter as on the flip side being primarily a wide receiver, might play a little bit on defense and sub packages to help out, I think I'd be able to digest having Travis Hunter as my number one receiver and even be able to digest me having him at number two right now. But the fact that we're talking he's going to be a cornerback with a little bit of a sprinkle here and there on offense, that's just kind of what my hang up is right now.
I'm fine with it. What my hang up is who you listed as your number 3 receiver. If I remember correctly, you went with Emeka Egbuka over Teteroa McMillan. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Sell me, bud.
I think Igbuka gets a lot of his draft stock dried up, and not because of his performance. His freshman year, he was getting the same treatment as a freshman wide receiver as we're seeing right now out of some of that wide receiver room that were freshmen this year at Ohio State. I think he just got a little bit musty smell because of the amount of talent that comes out of Ohio State. With Igbuka, you're talking about a guy consistently 6'1", 205, great size. I mean, prototypical size. He's very talented. He in his career, we're talking about a guy that has 2,000-yard receiving seasons,
Right.
2 seasons, 100-plus catches, 2 seasons, double-digit touchdown receptions. A guy that's caught over 75% of the passes gone his way. 75% of the targets he has caught in his career at Ohio State. And the fact of the matter is, his 40 time, no, it's not Matthew Golden or Travis Hunter, but 4.48 at 6'1", 205, he's moving pretty good. He's going to give some cornerbacks some fits. He's going to have some mismatch opportunities with free safeties on the overhang. He's going to have some mismatch opportunities in the slot if you get an outside linebacker covering him. I just love the pure route running ability that this guy has. It's just impeccable, and it's incredible. And I really see him as a savvy route running technician that's a borderline wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 for the duration of his career.
So I have him as a wide receiver 2 ceiling, and I have what I think is a good comp. Robert Woods, number 2 receiver at USC, spent a lot of time with the Bills as the number 2 receiver. Carved out a really nice career as the other guy in an offense. Does all the small things well. You said it. Isn't going to blow you away with any of the workout numbers, but everything he does is just so smooth. He's a hard worker. He's a willing blocker, finds windows, able to work back to the football, strong hands. Like you said, catches everything, caught better than 75% of the targets over his entire career, of which, by the way, he is the all-time leading receiver at The Ohio State University, which look at the list of receivers who's come out of that place. Now, the argument is all those guys left well before Egbuka. They did not spend their entire college careers there or their NCAA eligibility there. But he's a guy who got it done for a long time. And I think the fatigue is a storyline that I've been hearing. Basically, 3 years ago, it was, oh, man, can you just imagine when this guy's, NFL draft eligible? And he finally is. And just people like kind of breaking down his game for 2 years. They start looking for things that what he can't do as opposed to what he can and does do extremely well, pretty consistently. He was absolutely in my list for guys who are in that 4-5 range on my top 5. I can tell you why I left him off when we get to that, but I didn't have him in the top 5. But he's going to be a good receiver. If he gets on the team, I go, listen, as long as we got a number 1, I'm glad that Egbuka is my number 2.
And the thing about him, though, is, like I said, I think his name got musty because of the amount of time that he spent at Ohio State. If he would have came out after his junior year, I truly believe he'd be one of the top receivers taken in that draft class. I'm not saying these are his comps that he's going to get to, but I see a lot of St. Brown and Jackson Smith and Jigba in him. St. Brown because of his ability.
JSN, yeah.
The reason for St. Brown is his ability to win from the slot, his smooth, solid movements, and his very detail-oriented route tree that he has and he's able to run. With JSN, pretty similar. His potential as a slot receiver in a West Coast offense that we saw that he did at Ohio State. I think he's going to be a pro's pro. He reminds me a lot of the kind of guy, again, not saying this is what he's going to be, but of a Cooper Kupp. Great route running, great hands, good size. Doesn't have that 4.2, 4.3 speed that's a burner, but he's just got enough of juice in the tank to be able to make a living off of it and make some defenses pay.
I love it, dude. He's going to be a good receiver. I'm going to go with my number 3 guy, who's also all the way down to your number 4 receiver. Couple of weeks ago, not that long ago, was the perennial number 1 across everyone's boards. Feel like he's falling maybe a little bit, and I think people may live to regret that. We're talking about Teteroa McMillan, 6'4", 219 pounds, out of Arizona. Did not run at the combine, isn't doing his pro day, had a conflict, so he held a private workout. Don't have vert or broad numbers, but we do have a 40 time. Ran 4.48 at 6'4", 219, arm length of 31.5 inches, and they measured his hands at 10 inches. So big hands. The more I watched him, Joe, three-year starter, freshman of the year, 26 career touchdowns, back-to-back 1,300-yard seasons. This is a guy who's able to find windows, work back to the ball, and what he does best is it's the long arms and the strength. At the top of the route, I'm not saying it's offensive pass interference. He kind of knows how to push off. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
He's a
really
little
smooth.
handsy.
He's really subtle. He's handsy, but he uses it really well, and he rarely got called for it. So I feel like it's something that's it's not egregious. He's just smart about doing it. The thing that's growing on me, the more I watch him, is the catch radius, and it's just the pure body type. And this is where I went with 4 and 5. Slot receivers in this draft, there's a ton of them. Second, third round, we're going to see 10 receivers come off the board, and you're going to hear slot guy, slot guy, slot guy for all of them. There aren't many true outside boundary receivers in this class. And I think of those guys, boundary, tall, big striders, stretch the field, 50-50 ball winners, Tet McMillan is at the top of that list. And when you went back and watched, not like this past year was impressive. Actually, 2 years ago, his sophomore season was incredible. And I started hearing rumblings and people talking about, when they get through the interviews and whatnot at the combine, that it's not he didn't not try this year, but there was a little bit of, well, Arizona lost a lot to the draft, wasn't draft eligible, got to play. Not so good like Michael Parsons was a couple of years ago, where you can just kind of sit out. I'm a top 10 pick, just lock it in. I don't even have to play. He played, and he went for over 1,300 yards. But it was almost like you felt that he could have done more. And I wonder, and I hope that comes out, that dog comes back out, that sophomore season dog that we saw McMillan, that really turned heads and made him the prospect sort of star that he was at the start of this draft season. I hope he becomes more of that in the NFL.
The reason why I had Tet fall here for me, and I'm still a Tet fan, but the biggest thing that really caught my attention, I didn't realize and this what put me down on him a little bit. Yards after catch average. Any guess on what his yards after catch average is?
No.
3.1. Smells like tight. Smells like tight end.
Catch it and go down.
Catch it and go down. To make your bread and butter in the NFL, and for me to consider you as a top, I'm not saying he's not a top tier receiver, but to make yourself an all-pro receiver, I think I have him probably as a tier 2, tier 3 receiver in this draft class, is because it's that yards after catch. That's what people get paid off of in the NFL. That's what your job as a receiver is. Yes, catch the ball, but not just go down and get tackled or just go down. You've got to be able to make that play. And that's what puts you as your average possession receiver / tight end to being a superstar. Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, St. Brown, those guys that can make people miss, pick up the extra yards, and just do it all.
I'm with you. So he fell. So he's my number 3. He's your number 4. I want to give you my number 4, and I'm going to give you why he's my number 4. I know you like this guy, but I know he didn't crack your top 5. Jaden Higgins.
He was close. He's probably like a 5A or a 6 for me.
Yeah, no, and I get it. Believe me, I know that this 3, 4, 5 was so hard. I'll give you the same reasoning that why I ended up with Higgins and why I ended up with Harris as my 4 and 5. Outside boundary receivers with long arms, can elevate, win 50-50 balls along the boundary. These aren't slot only guys. These are guys who can play in the slot, be big slot receivers. Jaden Higgins, 6'4", 214, ran 4.47 in the 40, vertical jump of 39 inches, broad of 10.8, arms like go-go gadget, 33 and an eighth inch. Talk about production in 2 seasons at Iowa State. And we're not talking about great quarterback play. 2,166 yards and 15 touchdowns. Played across from another NFL receiver. So, a guy you could say who's taken coverage away from him a little bit. I can see that argument. But also, you got another NFL receiver over there. If Jaden Higgins wasn't any good, all the targets would go the other way. And yet we've got a 2,000-yard receiver, 15 touchdowns in 2 seasons, reliable pass catcher, big hands, wins 50-50 balls, can run the whole route tree. I understand that the top speed is probably average at best in the NFL, but because of that height and the long legs, he's a long strider, good footwork. He's able to basically muscle smaller defensive backs. I think he's going to be a horse in the NFL.
The reason why he fell down my chart a little bit, same reason as McMillan, 2.8 yards after catch average for his career.
I get it. He's not a consistent, break across the middle of the field, catch it and go kind of receiver. I have a few of those in my best of the rest.
And for comparison, guys like Burden, guys like Igbuka, guys like Golden, they're averaging over 6 yards after catch on Yak. I mean, it doesn't seem hindsight like a lot, but when you add that up over a season, over how important those extra 3 yards are, I mean, that's the difference between a first down and you're punting the ball away.
1,000%. You're correct. I just think one thing that when you have that elite slot guy and you want to get him a mismatch in the slot, the first thing you have to do is you have to have guys on the outside to draw coverage away from that slot guy. The middle of the field can be really packed in. So those guys that really own the middle of the field, if you don't have anything pulling coverage to the outside, the middle of the field is going to be packed. So I think you need guys like Jaden Higgins and Ted McMillan and Trey Harris to be on the outside and have the capability of winning those one-on-one 50-50 balls. And they're not going to be they're not going to see no coverage out there. They're just not going to be left alone. So the yards after catch doesn't bother me as much. It's the fact that they're making that catch, that you have to slide the safety out, that you have to push somebody underneath them to open up the middle of that field so your slot Yak guy can do his thing. I don't think you're wrong on either of them. Love Luther Burden, love Igbuka. I just put a higher price tag on the outside boundary capable guys as opposed to guys who are pretty much limited to the slot.
Fair enough.
Talk about your number 5. I talked about Trey Harris. I've talked about at length for Trey Harris. 95.0 PFF grade versus man coverage. I don't care about the time speed. He ran a 4.54. All I said was he needed to run sub 4.6, and I was good. He ran it. He was great. 1.56 to the 10-yard split. He's perfect. I've seen the tape. Don't overthink it. Watch Trey Harris. Just watch the game where you're following everything Trey Harris pops. Go back and watch the film specifically of Trey Harris and just appreciate what that guy's able to do. That's why he's my number 5. A little bit smaller than Higgins. That's why I put him there. You went with Luther Burden at 5. Talk to me about Burden, because he would have probably been the other guy I would have put in the slot.
5'11", 208, 21 years old. He was the consensus number 1 receiver and potentially on some boards the number 1 prospect coming out in his high school class. The guy just catches everything. He's got an over 85% target to catch rate for his 3-year career at Missouri and his 3 years there. The guy just does it all. He's got the speed, the athleticism at 5'11", 208, so he's not small by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe a little bit on the height side compared to what some people like to see. But at a 4.4 flat, 40-yard dash time, it's just something that he's got the tools in the making. We talked about his biggest issue is the sniffles, the chews, some drops. But I think that's something he can clean up with some work on the jugs machine and over time. And I just think he's too much of a talent to pass up on. And we're seeing a lot of the NFL going to these RPO bubble screens, RPO slants, and that's what this guy ate at in college. Um, just this season alone, 16 screen catches, 72 screen yards on the season. He's just a guy that knows how you get the ball in his hands as an athlete, and he's able to make a difference. And the one guy he reminds me a lot of, Deebo Samuel.
Yep, I've heard the same comparison and sort of the same character concerns. The thing about him is the heights are really, really high, but the consistency, it's up and down. I don't know if you watched the Alabama game, had an injury, came back from the injury. Alabama's a tough place to play when you're not 100%. So he wasn't at 100%. The quarterback play wasn't that great. I mean, that game did him no favors, and he wasn't feeling great going into that game, but he quit in that game. Does that give you any cause for pause for what he might be at the next level?
I think it definitely does. I think that's why I have him at number 5. I definitely think he has the athleticism and the ability to be a lot higher up than that. But I think there is a little bit of the concerns like the James Pierces of the world with character. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see where he ends up and how this goes moving forward.
I think one of my favorite things I read about him was he was like, someone was like, "Oh yeah, that's right. Wide receivers are divas," and he's the guy that reminded you that wide receivers are divas. He's an interesting cat. You mentioned number 1 player in his class in 2020. I want to say 2022. Coming out of high school, A+ athlete, a guy you want to manufacture touches for. Could have put him in boom or bust, honestly.
Oh, absolutely.
But, yeah. But absolutely a guy, if you get him on your team, if he came to my team, my first instinct, I would not think, well, there's character concerns, there's this or that. I'd be like, yeah, dude, we got a playmaker. All right, Joe, we went through our top 5. Who do you have? We're at a tight 57 minutes here, bud. And I want to make sure that we get through your sleepers because it's a great list. Who do you have in your best of the rest? I've got a bunch of guys.
I'll defer to you as on the best of the rest. I'll defer to you on that one because my best of the rest, one of my receivers that would be in best of the rest is in my sleeper little segment here.
Okay, so I'll give you a few, and you can just shoot at me what you think about that guy. These are in no particular order. This is not 6 through 9. These are just guys who I just intrigued the hell out of me. And if they got on my team, I'd be like, oh man, we might have one here, man. First off the list, 6'4", 222 pounds, 4'4", 40, 10.25-inch hands, versatility, played wide receiver, wildcat quarterback, and running back. Savion Williams out of TCU. Drops are a concern. He's got more red flags than China, but man, just relentless competitor. And just the combination of size, speed, and toughness makes him an intriguing prospect. Huge upside. What do you think of Savion?
Big fan of Savion. Wouldn't mind him in Cleveland. He would be on my list as best of the rest of just missing that top 5.
Fair enough. I heard the comp of Cordero Patterson. I guess it's like to the interviews. They were like, so just kind of, hey, ever since the season, what have you been up to? Are you graduating? Are you still enrolled? Have you been working out? And his answer was like, I didn't even buy books that semester. So like that guy is all football.
He was just there for football.
He's just there for football. And I just think he's going to be a monster at the next level. Savion Williams, it's another guy, boom or bust, and like nowhere in between. Second guy, best of the rest. I love him. Underperformed at Texas this past year. 5'11", 180 pounds. Legit world-class speed. High school sprint champ. Ran 4.39 in the 40 at the combine. Still averaged 15.9 yards per catch in a down season. Isaiah Bond, Alabama transfer. Small hands. Has the traits to develop into an outstanding route runner. Good hands, can play wide or in the slot. And once again, I'm just looking at speed. A guy that you can manufacture touches for that keeps DCs up at night. Isaiah Bond, what do you think?
Huge fan of Isaiah Bond.
Mm.
He's a home run threat every time he gets the ball. That versatility, that athleticism. I think we'd be talking about him a lot more if Matthew Golden wasn't his sidekick this past season. I think we would have been a lot higher on Isaiah Bond. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. I think he's going to have a phenomenal career, and he's definitely a guy that I would have on my short list. My Cleveland Browns looking for a receiver in this year's draft, and Isaiah Bond is one of those guys that I definitely have on my short list that I would love to see in a Browns uniform.
Feels like another former Texas receiver, Xavier Worthy, who went in the first round last year and then just kind of exploded in the right offense. The production wasn't there, but all the traits are there, and you just give him an opportunity. You can't buy speed, and I just think he could be a real difference maker. Okay, my next guy on the other end of the spectrum, we talked about the speed guy. Now we're going to talk about a route merchant, Xavier Restrepo. Love him. I don't know if I texted you first or you texted me first. Ran at his Miami Pro Day a couple of days ago. Clocked him at like 4.77, 4.8. Came out later that he pulled his hamstring in warmups. Unfortunately, he's not going to have another chance to run before the draft. But this is another guy that I just look. Stopwatches are one thing. Just turn on the tape, man. Believe the tape. 2,219 yards, 17 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. First team All-American in 2024. The guy gets open. And I wrote down bulked up Hunter Renfrow. What say you?
Yeah, I think that's a very good comparison for him. I think he took a lot of backhanded comments about his 40 time prior to finding out about that he had a tweaked hamstring and some lower body issues going on.
That was the whole thing the whole time was like, what's Renfrow going to run? Nobody ever accused him of being a burner, but the 4.7 plus is concerning. Now, the hamstring, I hope is real. I hope it's not just an agent thing. Say it's your hamstring. But like I said, throw on the tape, and it's not an accident. Cam Ward didn't explode this year throwing to nobody. Restrepo helped him out a ton, and it seemed like anytime there was some urgency in that Miami offense, it was call the play, snap the ball, 1, 2, 3, where's Restrepo? And I just think in the NFL, that thick lower body runs through tacklers, catches everything, tough at the point of the catch. I just look, man, he's a safety blanket. Put him out there. Quarterbacks are going to love this guy.
He's a wubba for a quarterback. Almost 7.5 yards after the catch on the season. Nearly 1,100 receiving yards out of the slot. I think he is the ideal prototypical slot receiver in the NFL that's going to make a living. Reminds me a lot of Sterling Shepard. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I know Sterling Shepard isn't that big name that we're all used to hearing, the Justin Jeffersons of the world, but the guy's made his money, and what he does it well.
It's not an accident guys like that are in the NFL for 10 years. Exactly.
No.
Exactly. I've got one more, and I put this guy down here because I think it's an excellent transition between wide receivers and your top sleepers, because this guy is both. Tell me if you've even heard of this guy, and if you hadn't, go look him up. This is a TDP exclusive, baby. Chimere DK out of Florida. 6 foot 1/2 inch, 196 pounds. Burner, 4.34, 32 1/8 inch arms, 10.8 broad, 38 1/2 inches in the vert. Lean, mean, speed machine, twitchy, get off, vertical burner. And here's what I wrote down. Makes his money running away from DBs on crossing routes. Wisconsin transfer, played at UF 1 year, led the team in catches and touchdowns. Didn't have consistent quarterback play in 5 years of college football. Wisconsin, not exactly a QB factory. The kid at Florida's okay, but I'm pretty sure he only had like 5 or 6 games with that talented freshman. He plays with urgency. He plays with hustle. He blocks like he's possessed. I look at him as a super sleeper with amazing room to grow. And again, I'm not a great comp guy, but I see Darius Slayton, another guy that you go, well, not huge in, but like put Darius Slayton as like, if he's your number 4 receiver, you like that.
Mm-hmm.
So Shamir DK, that's my wide receiver super sleeper.
I like
All right,
DK.
you like DK, so you know him already.
I know DK. He's not on my sleeper list, but if I sat here and did a longer list, he would definitely be up there.
Good, I appreciate that. All right, so at this point, we know who the headliners are. The guys expected to hear the names called early come draft night. But as any good scout will tell you, the draft isn't just about the stars at the top. It's about finding value, identifying overlooked talent, and hitting on the guys who can outperform their draft slot, which brings us to our last segment for tonight, the top sleepers. Joe has done the homework, scoured the film, put together a list of under the radar prospects that he believes could make a real impact at the next level. These aren't the household names, but they might just be the ones having fan bases asking, how did we get this guy in the 5th round? Joe, you pitched this list of yours to me. I loved it. I didn't want to take credit for your hard work, so that's why I had to have you on this episode to bring this absolute gold mine of a list of yours to the people. So take it away. Give me your list. I'll react if you want me to, but you hold court. Who's on your top sleepers list?
Definitely would love to hear your reactions. Definitely would love to hear the listeners' reactions. My Twitter is attached, so hit me up if I would love to see your guys' reactions on these.
Heck yeah.
So no particular order here, no rankings on 1 through 5 sleeper, just an overall top 5 sleepers. The first one I want to talk about is my man out of Texas, Jaden Blue. Now this guy, he's a junior, 40-yard dash time. It was 4.38, so great speed. Coming in at 6 foot, 200 pounds. So he's not afraid to lower the shoulder, run guys over, and he's a home run threat every time he touches the ball. The main issue he had out in Texas, he ran a lot of two-back committee set. A lot of athletes out there in Texas, a lot of guys, a lot of mouths to feed. I think if he was a primary bell cow, his numbers would have been a lot more favorable than we saw. Not that he had a down season. I mean, 135 carries this year, 728 yards rushing, 5.4 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns. But hey, guess what? The kid can also catch.
Yes.
400 receiving yards this year out of the backfield, or just shy of 400 yards, excuse me. And the best thing about this is it's only a 2-year clip we have on this kid. 2022 missed most of the season due to injury, only played 3 games. 2024 started to get the ramp up. His name started to come around a little bit, 7.1 yards per carry, but only had 65 carries on the season. And finally this year, he was able to get to the 135 mark in carries, 728 yards, good for a 5.4 yard average. I think if this kid had that ball 175, 200 times in a season, this kid's breaking 1,000 yards plus, 1,200 yards. I think he's a great talent. I see him being a 3-down back. He has the ability to be in pass protection. His lack of strength, though, can cause some issues against those bigger D tackles coming down the A gap. But I think he's more than able to pick up a blitzing linebacker or a corner on the outside. But he's just got game-changing long speed for the NFL level.
I love it. I'll just read you my quick thing I wrote up on Jaden Blue. Tread on the tires. Not a whole lot of carries in the college career. We like that. Started this season as the fourth running back on the depth chart, but injuries let him get into the lineup. That's big. Fumbles were a problem. Not a great between the tackles runner, but he's an absolute mismatch for linebackers in the pass game, and you hit on that real well. So I think the combination of a lot of tread left on the tires, a speed guy, mismatch for linebackers in the pass game, he can give you multiple down versatility. I can see Jaden Blue being a nice late round steal.
I have him in that pick 124 to 140 range. It's kind of where my thought process is.
So like fourth
yeah,
to early 5th.
I think he'll make a team very happy. Next one on the list. I know you're a fan of this guy. We've talked about it briefly. Jordan Birch, the D end out of Oregon, 6'6", 295 pounds. This guy, well, now here's the guy. Let me tell you, he's played in 36 career games. He has 78 hurries in 3 seasons in quarterback pressures. His biggest knock, I think, is fully getting home for the sacks. Out of those 78 hurries, only has 15 career sacks. But this guy just over the board reminds me so much of Matthew Judon with his great measurables.
Big comp.
He could play a 3 technique. He could play a 7 technique. Heck, I'm sure the kid could play a 0 technique as a nose guard if you need him to at 295 pounds. He just has a great knack for the football and great anticipation. And he has a very, very low missed tackle rate, which is probably one of the best attributes he has. He doesn't miss a lot of tackles.
So here's what I had. Combine, I think that's Oregon. The Combine had him at 6'4", 279. So he lightened up a little bit for the Combine. Maybe the playing weight was closer to 295, which shows you he can put on weight, which is what you want to see. Yes, position versatility, 4'6'7" at 40 at 280 pounds, 16 career sacks. Doesn't particularly set the edge well in the run game, but a late round defensive end who could give you some plus pass reps. Pass rush reps, rather.
Yeah, I think he has the ability to be a great run stopper, too. I mean, at that size, his discipline, his low tackle miss rate, he's the entire package. I don't think he's getting as much love as he should. I mean, this is granted a very deep defensive line draft, but I think he's that true 4-3 D end, and I think he's going to make a killing in the NFL here in his career.
We'll see. Who else you got for me? Sleeper list.
This is one that I love. You hadn't heard of him until I brought him up to you, but Jared Wilson, the center out of Georgia, at 6'3", 310 pounds. He's only a junior, so he's a 3-year starter down there at Georgia, so SEC country. And this is where things get crazy. In 1,000 career snaps and just over 650 career passing snaps, the guy has given up 1 sack and 6 hurries in his 3-year starting career at Georgia. This is a guy that's going to be a bona fide Pro Bowl talent at center for many years, all pro. He's the Joe Thomas of the center position. This guy doesn't miss time due to injury. He makes all the blocks. He's the quarterback of that offensive line. He's got quick hands. Everything about him is just top notch. The only thing, if I had a knock on him with, is doesn't possess imposing strength on that offensive line.
So you did tell me about him, and I have a very short synopsis. 1-year starter, not a bully, but super athletic for the position. Will need the right system, but he reminds me of current Dolphins center Aaron Brewer when we got him from the Titans. Basically, what I heard was what I saw. He's not a bully in the run game, or I should say, in pass protection, he's not going to hold up against a big 0-1 technique. But in the run game, his feet are so good. He moves very light for a guy who's 310 pounds. Really good at getting to the second level and sealing. Athletic for 310 pounds is the big takeaway. We'll need the right system, but Aaron Brewer just had a career year in that Dolphins stretch zone system. I think if he gets to the right place, he could be a real good player. In a class that doesn't have a lot of great centers, he may be the best.
And very rarely do we see a lot of great centers in the NFL or draft.
You're right.
A lot of these guys are people that get moved from tackle, get moved from guard. This is a guy that is a true center and a true man of his craft.
I love it. So let's see, 1, 2, 3. Who was number 4?
Kyle Williams, a wide receiver at a Washington State University.
This is the one I was waiting to hear about. Talk to me about Kyle Williams. I'm a fan.
6 foot, buck 86, 4.40. At the Combine, 1,200 yards receiving this year, just shy of 900 receiving yards last year, 20 touchdowns between the two. His average, though, yards per reception, just a shade under 16 yards of reception. So this guy knows how to stretch the field. He's got that ability to go deep. He just has those traits that you look for in a wide receiver. I'm not sitting here saying the guy's going to be a wide receiver 1, but I think he's going to be a very high-end wide receiver 2 and make some quarterbacks very, very happy in the NFL that he's on their side. The guy just has a knack of finding the football and is able to get open deep.
Knack to finding the football is probably the greatest thing. Mountain West Conference Freshman of the Year in 2020 when he was at UNLV. He's played a lot of football in college. His biggest knock is that you just don't look at him. We're in draft season. This is underwear Olympics time. Everybody wants to see the biggest, fastest, strongest freaks of nature out there. Kai Williams isn't that. What he is is a hell of a wide receiver. Since he transferred to Washington State, 2,041 yards and 20 touchdowns in only 2 years. He's gotten better everywhere he's gone. And he started out, once again, UNLV. I think that was, what's his, Marion. Brett Marion from University of Pittsburgh ran that offense, pitched the ball around a lot. One freshman of the year out there, able to move up a little bit. Played with Cam Ward at Washington State for a year, had a bunch of yards there. Followed up this year, another new quarterback. You're right. High-end number 2, probably not a number 1 guy, not super physically imposing, just knows how to get open, consistent catcher of the football, hard worker, played a lot of football. Use all the cliches, gym rat, sneaky athletic. They all fit.
Mm-hmm. And the last one I have on the board for I mean, I could go on for days on these sleepers.
I know.
Bunch of guys I wish I could bring up, but one that really impressed me lately, Mello Dots in the corner out of Kansas. The guy's 6'1", 190 pounds. He's got 11 career touchdowns for the Jayhawks. He's got 13 career interceptions and passer ratings against him. First year was rough. I'm not going to lie, 112.8 passer rating against him. But since then, sub-70s passer rating the last 2 years. Has only allowed a combined 79 receptions in the 2 seasons against him. And we're talking about over 170 passes thrown his way. So very good. He's not going to be the guy that I think is the ball hawk that we saw in college at Kansas with those 11 career interceptions once he gets the NFL, but he's going to be a guy that's sticky. He's able to break it up, gets a lot of deflections, and is just kind of that thorn in a wide receiver's side that he's nagging you all game long.
Yeah, I wrote down 12 career interceptions, 4 pick sixes, so that turned defense into offense. Not super twitchy, not a great tackler. Annoying is a great word. Pull him from central casting. He looks like an NFL CB. Doesn't do anything elite off the charts, but he's not really bad at anything either. I think tackling is probably he's a technician. So there's really, I mean, if he gets blown by a super athlete, so be it. That's kind of how that goes. But he doesn't get beat often, and when he does get beat, he's usually right there on top of it. 12 career interceptions, and he played across from another NFL caliber DB and Kobe Bryant. So there was a nice back and forth when they played offenses as far as where's the ball going to go. Got to be ready on every play.
He's the kind of guy you can put out there on an island. I truly believe, at least at the college level. NFL, you might need a little safety help over the top when he does go against these receivers like a Matthew Golden that has blazing speed. But I think he's physical enough and handsy enough that he would be able to slow those guys down and keep the game played at his speed.
I love it, man. You got anything else for me?
That's all I got. Another great podcast. Appreciate you having me on. Definitely always a great time to get in here. This is one of those things. This is the off season for me as a coach. Not too much going on right now besides the off-season weight room program, but this has definitely got my juices going a little bit. Being able to talk about prospects, because it's something that when you're a high school coach, it's nothing but prospects and trying to get those guys to the next level. So this definitely gets the juices flowing and gets you excited for spring ball and really helps you start thinking about the guys on your 53-man roster, about how you can break them down also.
Awesome, man. That was great. Always a lot of fun. All right. That's a wrap for this episode of the Draft Podcast. Once again, huge thanks to my guest, Joe Allward. Follow him on X, Twitter, talk to him. He's good. He'll talk ball anytime. Thank you for bringing the heat. And whether you agreed, disagreed, or just shook your head at our boomer bust takes, that's what draft season's all about. Next week, we're keeping the momentum rolling. We'll be diving even deeper into prospect analysis, bringing more hot takes, more film breakdowns, and probably more arguments that'll have listeners wondering if Joe and I are going to settle our draft disagreements in the parking lot after the show. As always, I want to hear from you, football faithful. Did Joe and I nail our wide receiver rankings, or did we miss the mark? Are you team boom or team bust on Jalen Milroe? And what about Joe's sleepers? Any of those names on your radar? Hit me up on Twitter at RufusP88 and let me know who you're pounding the table for in the war room. I'm always ready to talk draft. Make sure you're subscribed to the Draft Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your football fix. And if you enjoyed tonight's show, drop us a 5-star review. Until next time, keep grinding the tape. Thanks for hanging out. I'm Paul Adams-Zach, and I'll see you Monday morning on Flagship City Sports Talk, 9 a.m. on 105.9 FM and TalkErie.com.